Well, last year, around this time, I went with two of our church members, Mary Fechtig and Elizabeth Estes, to a UCC church in Massachusetts. And we went there for a progressive Christianity conference. And one of the keynote speakers at the conference was Diana Butler Bass. Diana Butler Bass is a million-selling progressive Christian author and a theologian. And if you have never read any of her books, I highly recommend that you do so. At the conference last year, she was promoting her latest book, which is called Grounded, which is out now in paperback. And the subtitle of the book is Finding God in the World, a Spiritual Revolution. And her premise of this book is that we as Christians need to shift our thinking. We need to change our understanding, she says, of a vertical God and shift it to an understanding of a horizontal God. She says that in the Christian church for centuries now, we have been taught that there is a three-tiered vertical world. That the devil is below, we're in the middle, and God's up there. And we've been taught that the purpose of our faith, the purpose of Christianity, is to ensure that we get up there and that we don't go down there. She says that we need a revolution. We need to shift that thinking. And Diana Butler Bass writes in the book Grounded, like countless others, I have been schooled in vertical theology. Western Christianity has imprinted a certain theological template that God exists far off from the world. Sermons declared that sin separated us from God. Most American churches teach some form of the idea that God exists in holy isolation, and that we, God's children, are utterly unworthy to stand before the divine presence. The role of religion, therefore, is to act as a holy elevator between God and us sinners, down below here in the world. Because of this, church has become a real struggle for me. I have found it increasingly difficult to sing hymns that celebrate a hierarchical heavenly realm, to recite creeds that feel disconnected from life, to pray liturgies that emphasize salvation through blood, and to listen to sermons that preach an exclusive way to God, to participate in sacraments that exclude others, and to find myself confined to a hard pew in a building with no clear windows to the outside world. This has not happened because I'm angry at the church or at God. Rather, it's happened because I was moving around in the world and I began to realize how beautifully God was everywhere, in nature, in my neighborhood, in considering the stars. It took me 5 decades to figure it out, but I finally understood. The church is not the only sacred space. The world is profoundly sacred as well. And thus, I fell into a gap. The theological ravine between a church, which is still proclaiming conventional theism with its three-tiered universe, and the spiritual revolution that God is with us and within us. So that's the spiritual revolution she's calling us to. Stop seeing God up there and start seeing God here. God is with us in the world. God is here with us, here and now. In order for us to grow spiritually, we have to shift from what conventional Christianity taught us was that God was distant from us. God is not distant from us. God is not separate from us. God is with us and within us. And when you grow spiritually, you stop seeing God up there and you start seeing God in all of creation. And you begin to have an intimate sense of the sacred and the divine. I think that's what Jesus was teaching us. Jesus never said God was up there. Jesus' words are, "The kingdom of heaven is within you." He said, "The kingdom of heaven is at hand. It is here and it is now." That's what he said. God is here. God is in the water. God is in the plants. God is in the sky. God is in you. That's what Jesus was trying to teach us. In the beautiful reading that Chris read for us this morning from the first chapter of the Bible, the book of Genesis, we hear the creation story. God created the water and the earth and the sky, the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, the flora and the fauna. And after God created each thing, God said, "It is good." Now the word good and the word God are the same word. So when God said, "I've created the earth and it is good," it really means it is God. That is why I, like the writer of our words of integration this morning, I am very dismayed by the fact that many Christians seem to care very little about protecting the environment. A recent Pew survey showed that just 6% of Americans say that their faith is an influence of their seeking protection for the earth. That there's a disconnect between their faith and protecting the environment. And I'm sure most of you know that an overwhelming majority of people who are climate change deniers are people who also call themselves Christian. I don't understand that. Now, we in the UCC think very differently. We actually have someone whose role is the UCC Minister of Environmental Justice. I think that's so cool that we have one. His name is Reverend Brooks Barrett. And he says that since most American Christians they think that climate change is a hoax, they don't believe in it, then of course they have no interest in protecting the environment. And that really fascinates me, that people could say they're Christian and yet they don't seem to care about what's happening to our planet. There seems to be a disconnect between their Christian faith and what's happening on the planet, on God's creation. Now, why is that? Why are so many climate change deniers Christian? Well, I think it has a lot to do with what Diana Butler Bass is saying in her book. Many Christians still see God up there. God isn't here. So we can use up what's here because we're going there. That's where paradise is, not here. And I think for many Christians, they believe that, well, if the seas are rising, God controls that. We have nothing to do with it. God's in control. And I think that they think that what we just heard this morning in Genesis, where we were given dominion over the earth, they confuse dominion with the word domination. To dominate means to conquer. It means to use up everything. But dominion doesn't mean that. Dominion means to govern, to care for. That's what God is saying. That we are called to care for creation. We are called to be good stewards, which means God's stewards. And the word steward means guardian. We are to be guardians of the garden, this paradise, this Eden that God has given to us, this heaven right here on earth that God has given to us. It's been entrusted to our care, and it is our Christian duty to make sure that we protect this creation. We are to honor the mother, honor Mother Earth. And when we turn a blind eye to issues of environmental justice, then we are harming the mother. When we hurt the planet, we are hurting God. Now, sadly, this is what is happening in our country right now. We are seeing that programs and protections that have been in place to curb climate change and to reduce air pollution, they are being removed, eliminated, completely taken away. And the reason for that, I believe, is greed. Mahatma Gandhi said, "Earth provides enough to satisfy every man's need, but not every man's greed." If you are not outraged by what's happening, you're not paying attention. We, as Christians, have a duty, and that duty is to make sure that we protect this planet. And one of the ways we do that is to make our voices heard, to speak truth to injustice. And we make our voices heard by attending town hall meetings and writing our political leaders and taking to the streets, like thousands of people did yesterday for the Science March, and thousands more will take place this upcoming Saturday for the People's Climate March, which I hope you will join us for in Holland. We're going to be carrying signs that say, "Christians for Climate Care," because we want them to see that Christians do care about climate change. So, make your voice heard. Let them hear you. Let them see you. That's how we proclaim the good news, by letting people know that the kingdom of heaven isn't in some far-off place, but proclaiming that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's here. It's now. On earth as it is in heaven. That's what we are to do. So let us go forth on this Earth Day weekend to be people who see God in all of creation and do everything we can to make sure that we protect Mother Earth. I'd like to leave with the Native American proverb that says, "We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it for our children." Namaste.